India is known as pharmacy of the world. And Indian pharmaceutical sector is heavily reliant on US, which accounts for over 31% of its exports and sources nearly half of its generic medicines from India. It faces serious concerns. The generic medicines, they face serious concerns over potential US sector specific duties and tariffs which US has imposed on India.
Donald Trump plans to raise tariffs to up to 250% on US pharma imports.
President Trump reasoned that the new pharma tariffs are necessary to boost medicine manufacturing within the US.
And cites India's continued imports of Russian oil as the trigger.
So we're going to be announcing very shortly a major tariff on pharmaceuticals.
मैं आपको बार-बार वादा करता हूं, मोदी के लिए आपके ही सर्वोपरि.
Now, with the global generic medicine market projected to reach $614 billion by the year 2030, it is imminent and important for both Washington and Delhi to have trade negotiations which are crucial for industry's future as well. Many policymakers are worrying that this US stance on India, this US tariffs which have been imposed on India, could undermine India's role as a key contributor, as a key global supplier of affordable generic medicines, and it raises broader questions of public interest and long-term viability on public health as well. So what are these generic medicines? Why generic medicines are important? What are challenges associated with generic medicines? And what is generic medicines issue related to US and India? All these questions alongside understanding patent and certain other terms as well, we'll be trying to understand in this particular session. Hello, my name is Pripal Singh and you're watching Perspective. Now, without a further ado, let's try to understand what are generic medicines or generic drugs. See, generic medicines are a drug that are exactly made like brand name drugs which are already available in the market. They have the same active ingredients, same strength, same safety, and same intended usage. Which means a generic drug works same as well as a branded one, as a branded medicine, and provides the same level of benefits, just that there is no marketing or no tag of any company. And it's made of generic salts. So basically one can think of it as an affordable version of the brand made medicines. And as you can guess very rightly, since there is no brand name associated with generic medicines usually cost very low. And they are available at a cheaper rates, so which means it is affordable for the poor sections of our society. See, normally most of the generic medicines works in this way, that whenever a medicine is launched by any of the company, any of the private company, whenever a medicine comes into the picture, into the market, there is a patent of the company for the generic medicine. One patent refers to the protection available to the company for protecting their invention which they have made, new scientific discovery or scientific innovation which they have made in the form of a medicine. So for a few years they are protected and no one would be able to use their formula. But after the time patent expires, as soon as it expires, someone other can copy your ideas, can be using your ideas legitimately, and thus the demand for generic medicines today remain extremely high, especially amongst the poor and vulnerable sections of our society. Now, since we have understood what are generic medicines, let us try to understand what is India's contribution to affordable healthcare in the world. See, India supplies around 20% of generic drugs to the world, and which is why it is known as definitely pharmacy of the world. Also, it produces affordable versions of brand name medicines which are widely prescribed around the world. So India is a leader in generic medicine production and it supplies around 20% of the generic medicines across the world. Also, one more important thing to understand is that Indian generic medicines, they dominate the US pharmaceutical industry and dominate US prescriptions, accounting for around 90% in areas like diabetes, anxiety, depression and cancer. Which means Indian medicines are at par with the US ones in relation to these particular things. Also, due to the use of generic medicines in US, it has saved the US in the year 2022 alone around 219 billion US dollars. Also, nearly $1.3 trillion have been saved by the US citizens from 2013 to 2022 because of the usage of these generic medicines. And these data also underscore India's important role indispensable role in ensuring global healthcare affordability. Now, since we have understood about generic medicines, we have understood about India's contribution as well. Now let us talk about these US tariffs, especially on pharmaceutical sector of our country. Now see, US is the largest international market for India's pharmaceutical industry, which means that nearly half of the generics which are made in India goes to US. And if tariffs are imposed on these medicines or drugs and the tariffs are high, this will significantly lower down the demand of these drugs from the international market. And this is going to affect the policymakers and the policies which are going to come in future. And as I've already told you that the generic medicine market is poised to reach around $614 billion by the year 2030, similar case has been reiterated again. Also, India's pharmaceutical strength should usually be shown in the bilateral negotiations between the countries, or also positioning India as a global health good. So positioning India's generic medicine as a global health good, which means these generic medicines helps people at large, people in general, at an affordable cost, at a lower cost. But the result is just the same, the salt is just the same as any expensive branded medicine. The efficacy and efficiency is a lot more similar to that of the branded medicines, and the cost is much cheaper than the cost of the medicines, the branded medicines. Now the question is that because of the US tariff, if India's exports of pharmaceutical is going to come down, the question is what needs to be done. See, one very practical approach is that India should move away from a transactional approach. So there are 2 to 3 things which can be done differently. See, India can move beyond a transactional approach in the bilateral trade agreements with the US. They can move beyond the transactional traditional approach. That is first one. The second one can be that the Indian Pharmaceutical Agency or Association or Alliance has proposed a reduction of import tariffs. They have proposed reduction of import tariffs on US pharma products to at least 0. But this definitely would felt flat because the US concern would be lying elsewhere. A lot of other things are going on in the world as well. Now, since we all know that generic medicines are very, very important, they work in the same way like normal branded medicines. Their efficacy is higher, efficiency is higher, it controls various diseases. It is essential for developing countries as of now. It has led to a newer technological integrations as well, and also at the end of the day, it is affordable medicine. Now, affordable does not mean that you have a lot of money and you can't spend on it. Even you have very less money, you can still watch it. Even if you have a lot of money, you can still watch it. That is the beauty of these smartphones. So the whole crux is that we have understood how important generic medicines are for us as a nation, for us being the pharmacy of the world, and for us earning money because of that as well. It is very, very crucial that we understand what is the conclusion for it, or what is the way forward. So the way forward is very, very simple. Whenever now the talks between India and US are going to happen. Also, one more which is related to this only is that India must resist unreasonable US demands while promoting generics as a global public good. India should restrict that, we're already restricting it. And India should resist that, we are already resisting it. Also, while this is done, Indian pharmaceutical giants should also collaborate with companies in Africa, should also collaborate with companies in South America and different other nations, developing and underdeveloped nations, to conduct those CSR activities. So right now, based on whatever we have understood, the global healthcare sector, pharmaceutical sector to be specific, and professional public healthcare is at the crossroads. So eventually what would happen is that this strategy would again put India to the map of the pharmacy of the world. Also, it would help India to protect public health and also secure domestic industry interests and position Indian pharmaceutical industry with a global leader. So positioning India's pharmaceutical industry as a global leader is what we all should be striving for, and for that negotiations with the US are quintessential, and that too direct negotiations, proper negotiations which are outcome oriented rather than just discussion oriented needs to be done. And if all goes well, the tariffs by the US to different countries, especially against India, would naturally come down over a period of time. A 17% tax is too much. So which is why the overall global pharmaceutical climate needs to be addressed with, and the issues needs to be corrected, so that generic medicine, India as a hub of generic medicine, remains so, and eventually we are able to see the more than 20% of the generic medicines of the world are sold by India. Make it to 50%. I hope you are able to understand something new from this perspective. Do let me know what are your views surrounding it. I'll be very happy to read them. All the very best. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.